Welcome to Lizzie's workshop. Today I am starting a new mixed media journal or mixed media book, and so I thought that I would start it off with a piece that I'm going to call Permission. I'll explain more about that later. What I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing a whole bunch of stencils from my stash and I am spraying through them with Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist for chalkboard mist. And the first one that I did, which was the orange through the honeycomb, that's called Alaskan Salmon, and it's a little bit orange with a bit of shimmer. Then I did Tomato, and that's got shimmer in it as well, and I also did Rum Punch, and then that's Tattered Angels, and then the bluish green one is called Ocean from Mr. Huey's Color Mists. I dried this quite a bit because I didn't want it to really move too much, and then when I got to the end of the project I realized actually I did want it to move quite a bit, so that was kind of silly of me. It really prevented a lot of the blending that I was looking forward to. But the problem is that because it was a glimmer mist, it has a little bit of grit to it, and I knew that I couldn't draw this stencil, which was quite detailed, onto the glimmer mist if it was wet. If I was just using just any kind of frame that was just a big shape of an image, it would have been okay, but because I was doing such fine detail, my pen would have just gotten clogged and wouldn't have functioned the way I wanted it to anyways. So I'm taking these two masks and I am going around them with my pen, and you'll see why in a bit. So then I had these cloth butterflies and they were just the right size for this spread, so I threw a bunch of them on. I ended up throwing on 4 big ones and 3 small ones, and then I just traced them, but they were the wrong tones for this piece, so I didn't actually keep the butterflies, I just kept their shapes. The next step that I'm doing is I'm going around everything with gesso. So I left the page raw so that it would absorb the ink, and then I put gesso over top to seal the bottom layer of ink in those certain spaces. And I wanted the color to blend a little bit in the background, but I didn't even think of that really until I just thought about what my pen would do when I wanted to do the stencil. So the paint or the ink underneath the spray inks, they're not blending as much as I would have liked them to, but I end up covering them up quite significantly anyway, so it's not quite a big deal. So what I'm doing is I'm going through the gesso with gesso. Oh, sorry, it's quite late here. But I'm going through with gesso just to kind of block out all the bright color and to kind of smudge things that are going on between the distinct parts of each image. And normally I would not have gone for something so detailed. Next time when I do this technique, I'm going to just use the base shape of the images. I'm not going to go to all the detail and go through with the gesso. Part of the reason that I'm not going to do that is because this type of image is not really, or this type of technique is not really made for a lot of detail work, and it takes a really long time to go through everything with gesso. But I did do it. And some places I get really thick gesso, and some places I get really thin amounts of gesso, and it's supposed to be inconsistent, and it's supposed to smudge what's underneath and leave open the masked images that I wanted. And you could really trace anything to be your masked image because all you're looking for really is the outline of that image. So you could, just make circles with your cup, or you could use die cut shapes, lay them on there and trace around them and then go around them with your gesso. It doesn't really matter what you choose to use. It would all work out. Sorry, I'm yawning quite a bit. It's after 11:30 here at night, so I could probably be in bed instead of doing this, but because this is the Halloween weekend, this is the first time that I've had even a moment of silence today, so yeah. So the reason that I made another video that will talk about the reason that I'm switching to a new journal, a new spread, so to speak, but I'm going to just touch on it now. And one of the reasons is that I wanted the size that my notebook that you've seen before is providing me, but I wanted to try out different papers. Another reason is because I like the size of the book, but it's like a standard binding, while this book that I'm showing you here is a coil bound notebook. With the coil bound notebook, I'm always working on a flat surface because I can either flip the images up or I can flip them all the way under. So I'm always working on a flat or an even surface. Whereas with a book that is fully bound, a notebook that is fully bound, you end up with a little bit of a trouble because you're always closing the pages and they're sticking together. And you always, if you work in chronological order, you have to try and figure out a way to allow your book to balance out in the end, and I'm having trouble with that. So the paint I'm going through with here is it's Dazzling Metallics from Deco Art, and the color is Worn Penny. It's kind of a brassy metallic kind of color, and I really like that. Sorry, I switched hands there. I'm finding that I do that quite a bit in my art, and I am definitely right-handed. But if you watch how I do my projects, sometimes the angle is just off, or I'm going to end up putting my hand into paint or something. So I end up switching to my left hand to paint things or draw things, and I didn't know that I had that skill until this past year. So that's actually pretty profound for me. And it's kind of interesting too, because I watch my children now that they're just learning how to write, and they often switch hands as well, and I'm wondering if that's just a learning thing or what, because I don't think I'm learning how to use my right hand anymore. I think I've pretty much got it down pat. But yeah, I've noticed through videotaping or recording everything that I create, I've noticed that I do switch to my left hand upon occasion, which is quite an interesting thing. It's quite an interesting observation. But yeah. So what I'm trying to do with this technique is work in the negative space and create the impression of a space that's not really there by lightening up the background with the gesso. And after this, I'm going to go through and I'm going to change the background again and just allow that open space to be. I did want to do this first because I did want the brackets that are holding the signs to stand out a little bit. And I like that. The signs hanging on chains there. But yeah, and I'm not really worried about anything because I've got all kinds of refining imagery to take care of later. So I'm not really worried about how much detail I did get in there because I'm going to be going over it with black lines over the Worn Penny and stuff like that. So I'm not too concerned. The color that I'm using here right now is it's called Leaf Green, and it's a plaid paint, plaid acrylic paint. This is not a high quality paint at all, and when I learned this technique in a mixed media class, we were using high quality paints. And the reason that I'm using these low quality paints, and they're actually quite old low quality paints, is because I have them and I'm playing and I'm trying to learn how to use all this stuff. And then once I have a better idea of how everything works together, I'll probably invest, once my bottles here are empty, I will probably invest in some better quality paints. But for right now, for the little stuff that I'm doing, I'm not too concerned about how things are going. I know that everything will work out, and it's not necessarily doing everything I want it to do, but if you're just playing and you're just learning a new product, it's really hard to go out and spend a whole bunch of money on a variety of colors. And my October was kind of a limited budget, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't have to buy anything for the beginning of this book. And also, this is the very first spread in this new mixed media book, and so, or journal, or whatever, artist journal. And so I really wanted to have this as kind of a, I guess you could say, a baseline, kind of a start point. So it's kind of the start point of techniques that I've learned over the past year, and it's my start point for learning new techniques and learning new products and testing out new products and old products. And it will definitely show over time when I use the low grade products versus as I get more skilled and, you know, change over to more quality products. As you flip through my journals, you'll see that metamorphosis, you'll see that growth, you'll see those changes, and I'm actually really looking forward to those. So I don't mind so much using low grade materials now, because I know that that will grow and that will change. So what I'm using here is a charcoal pencil, and it's called Primo Elite Grande. It's an organic black and it's number 5000. I like charcoal pencils, but I don't like charcoal pencils on cheap acrylic, and I don't like charcoal pencils on gesso, because they just don't move the way that I want them to move. And I don't know what was wrong with my fingers, but when I tried to rub this with my finger, it just wasn't spreading the way I wanted it to. So I ended up switching over to one of those I don't know what they're called, but they're like a roll of paper. There's like a smudger that's a roll of paper. You can get them at drafting stores, and drawing, when you go to a drawing supply store and where they sell the drafting pencils and the graphite and the charcoal pencils, and they're just spreaders. So yeah, I'm smudging it with that instead of my finger because it's working out a heck of a lot better. So then once I'm done going around the brackets, I'm going to go around each of the butterflies. And when I was going around the brackets with the charcoal pencil, that was a time of day or whatever had happened during the day. I wasn't really paying much attention, and I was kind of in a frustrated mood, so I was just kind of doing it on auto because I wanted to get it finished, and I probably shouldn't have done that, and it looked okay. But it, you know, I hate when I create something when my brain's not there, when my brain is totally somewhere else, because then I'm not really satisfied with what I've created. So when I got to the butterflies, it was a different day. It was the next morning, and I was in a lot better frame of mind. So instead of using the pencil, I switched over to a like a oil pastel in black. And this one is it's a higher quality. It's from Sakura. That's the same company that makes the micro pens and the jelly rolls and stuff like that. Micron pens and jelly rolls. And I really liked how this moved. In the future, I will probably use my gelatos, but I wanted to start somewhere. I didn't want to use the gelato because I knew how gelato would move, so I wanted to try out this oil pastel, because I really haven't used oil pastel at all. But once again, I was having trouble with my finger, and it wasn't allowing me to smudge anything, so I switched over to the other side of this smudging stick, and off I went. And as you can probably notice, I paid a little bit, not much, but I paid a little bit more attention to how I was shading. And this worked out much better with smudging and stuff. So after I get a lot of black on those layers, and I wanted it to be a very defined black, once I got finished with all that black and I was really happy with it, I tried smudging it with my finger, and it went a lot better. And I think it was just that the quantity of pastel that I ended up having on my finger as I went through each piece, and it allowed me to define those shapes with quite an excess of the pastel on my finger, and I really liked that. I was really happy with it by the time I was done with it. But once again, it was really hard to smudge and get detail with an oil pastel on the bottom of that sign and on the top of that sign, so in the future I will probably not use an oil pastel for that. Or, you know, I will use much less detail in my masks. So after I got done and I had enough quantity on there, I was able to smudge the way I wanted it to smudge. So I was happy with that. But it still needed something else. The background was really solid, and so I thought, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to use that black, and I'm going to define the edge of the thought, of the process, of the image. And a lot of times when you do that, it helps focus the eye, and it helps keep your eye within the boundaries of the image, or of the project, of the page, of the spread. And what you want to do is try to keep the people there, because you want people to look within the image, not, oh, well, it just kind of keeps going and floats off and there's no definite end. And I really like to have that definite end. This stamp that I'm using is it kind of is the image of broken up glass or concrete or whatever, it's cracks. And it's the very first mixed media stamp that I ever purchased years and years and years ago. And I couldn't figure out at that time why it didn't come with a background sticker and why it didn't come with a block or a square block or a wood block or any kind of way to grasp it or hold on to it. And now that I'm a little bit farther into this creative endeavor, so to speak, I know that, you know, most of the time in mixed media you don't use a block or any kind of thing like that. So after I go through and put the cracks in there with my StazOn black, I switched over to writing in text, and what I wanted it to say was permission, but I knew it wouldn't fit on there, so I did want to put it in 2 or 3 layers going down that sign, the word permission. And that's kind of the title of all of it, but it's kind of broken up because a lot of people are broken up about giving themselves permission to do things, so it kind of seemed fitting that it didn't fit on the sign, that it was a real struggle to get it in there, because a lot of times in life it's a real struggle for us to give ourselves permission to do things. So the stamp set that I used for permission is just one of the Recollections ones from Michaels. It's nothing special in any way, it's just block letters. So the stamp set that I'm currently, you can see me cutting apart, it was kind of one of those $1.50 bin kind of things, so they're really cheap but cute stamps. And they were all, the rubber was all stuck together. When I did my editing for this video, I went through and I tried to remove that, but sometimes my computer program has this glitch where instead of cutting the video clip where I ask it to, it recreates the same video clip, whether it's a 5-minute clip or a 20-minute clip, and it just adds it on to the end of the video. So I tried several times to clip out this stuff, but it just never worked out. So I was like, okay, well, whatever, we'll just talk over it, which worked perfect timing for the explanation. So the first sign was permission, and the second sign is permission for what? So as I went through, I didn't really have a plan. I was just kind of going through and thinking about what it's hard for me to give permission to myself to enjoy or to do. And so as I went through, I started out with, you know, the cliched, the live, the laugh, the love. Give yourself permission to do those things, to give yourself permission to live life, to laugh about everything, and to love people around you, and to be loved. And I just kind of kept going and going as my brain kept running on, and I ended up with things like giving myself permission to create, and to dance, to let go, to feel, to cry, to succeed, to sing, to laugh, to fail, to learn. And in big block letters on there, which you'll see in a couple minutes, I believe, I gave myself permission to try. So that's not everything that I need to give myself permission for, but it's a very good start. It's a very good beginning for a new journal. It's a very good place to begin this. I don't know, when I start a new journey, I kind of think of that as a new journey. So, you know, I'm going to try to give myself permission for all of these things as time goes on. And so yeah, I just keep going and going until I'm happy with all the little words that are on there. So yeah, that ended up with the 2 signs. And then I sat there and I stared at this and stared at it and stared at it, and then, see, I'm looking, and there's something that it still needs. It's not complete, it's not quite right. So I ended up mixing white acrylic paint with water to make it thinner, and then I used 2 paint brushes in order to spatter the white paint everywhere. And I didn't just want a little bit of spatter, I wanted it to be out of control. I wanted to give myself permission to kind of go crazy, to kind of do something that I wouldn't normally do, because I'm not really one for spatters. Spattering is not really a normal thing for me. So I really wanted to kind of go overboard and kind of emphasize that this is the beginning, that this is a place to start and to learn and to move forward from. And by the time that I was done, I was actually quite happy. The red that you see there in the palette, that is some of the spray that I sprayed on in the very bottom layer, and it's called Tomato. It's the bright red. And then I went over it with my heat gun and I slowly just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. And one of the things that I wanted to mention was when you've used an oil pastel or a charcoal pencil, going over it with your heat gun and heat setting it is actually a pretty good idea, because then it doesn't smudge every time that you run your fingers over it, or it doesn't, you know, spread all over your page after that or onto anything that backs it. So I was quite content after I had finished it all, and every time I look at it, I'm like, well, that's a very good place to start. So just up ahead here are the still pictures, and I kept them on. Usually I drop them down to 3 seconds each, but I'm allowing them to sit for 7 seconds, just so that you can kind of read through it all and kind of absorb the different layers. And also because this is the very beginning of this piece, and it's hard when you're looking from so high up to see all the different layers that I've put into my projects. So I really like the still images at the very end, and I hope that you do too, and join me again on Lizzie's workshop.